Cyber Threat Brief for April 9, 2026. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, adds actively exploited Ivanti EPM flaw to KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog with today's deadline. A 13-year-old Apache ActiveMQ bug enables unauthenticated remote code execution, discovered by Claude AI. Adobe Reader's 0-day targets Russian oil and gas sectors with no user interaction required. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily Cybersecurity Brief. April 9, 2026. Next section, Critical Alerts. Ivanti EPM code injection, CVE 2026-1340. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added CVE 2026-1340 to the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog based on evidence of active exploitation. This code injection vulnerability affects Ivanti Endpoint Manager Mobile (EP) and carries an EPSS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, score of 67.7%, 99th percentile, indicating high probability of exploitation. Federal agencies face a remediation deadline of April 9, 2026. Action: patch Ivanti EPM immediately. Federal FSEB agencies must remediate by end of day April 9. All organizations should prioritize this as actively exploited. Source: CISA. Adobe Reader 0-day exploited since December. Attackers have exploited an unpatched Adobe Reader vulnerability using malicious PDF documents since at least December 2025. Security researcher Hefei Lai discovered the attacks using a fingerprinting-style PDF exploit that works on the latest Adobe Reader version without user interaction beyond opening the file. The exploit leverages privileged Acrobat APIs, util, read file into stream and RSS. Add feed to steal local data and deploy additional remote code executions/sandbox escape attacks. PDF lures contain Russian language content targeting the oil and gas industry. Action: do not open PDF files from untrusted sources until Adobe releases a patch. Monitor and block HTTP/HTTPS traffic containing Adobe Synchronizer in user agent headers. Adobe has been notified but no patch timeline announced. Sources: Bleeping Computer Security Week. Team PCP Supply Chain. Cisco breach via Trivi, KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Deadline arrives, CVE 2026-33634. The Team PCP Supply Chain campaign, now tracked by Google GTIG as UNC 6780, breached Cisco's development environment via Trivi-compromised credentials. Attackers stole 300-plus private GitHub repositories containing AI product source code, customer code for banks and U.S. government agencies, and AWS keys used for unauthorized cloud activities. Multiple threat actors participated in the breach. Shiny hunters claimed access to 3+ million Salesforce records, and alleged victim data includes FBI, DHS, DSA, IRS, NASA, Australian Ministry of Defence, and Indian government agencies. CISA KEV deadline for CVE 2026-33634 is today, April 9, 2026, with EPSS 21.2%, 96th percentile. Yet no standalone CISA advisory has been published. Action: Cisco customers and partners with code or build artifacts in Cisco development infrastructure should contact Cisco to determine if repositories were exfiltrated. Organizations using affected Cisco AI products should monitor for unauthorized use of stolen source code. Federal agencies must remediate CVE 2026-33634 by end of day. Source: SANSISC. Next section, ransomware claims last 48h. 3 claims tracked from one group, TIMC, on April 8, 2026. These are unverified claims from ransomware leak sites, not confirmed breaches. Group victim sector country TIMC Oncologica, Com Healthcare unknown TIMC Sador, Com IT Services unknown TIMC Debin, Com unknown. Source: RansomLook. Next section, ransomware and extortion. Dutch healthcare vendor Chipsoft hit by ransomware. Chipsoft, a Dutch healthcare software vendor serving 80% of hospitals in the Netherlands, went offline April 7 following a ransomware attack confirmed by ZCert. The company's website remains unreachable, while email functions continue. 11 hospitals pulled Chipsoft systems offline as a precaution, 9 of which rely heavily on the software for patient records. The majority of Chipsoft customers retain access to patient portals. The threat group has not been identified. ZCert recommends auditing Chipsoft systems for unusual traffic and reporting suspicious activity. Action: organizations using Chipsoft should monitor systems for anomalous traffic patterns and unauthorized access. Healthcare organizations should review disaster recovery plans and ensure patient care continuity procedures are tested. Sources: the Register data breaches. Net. Iran-linked Pay2Key targets U.S. healthcare, with destructive intent. Former FBI cyber chief Cynthia Kaiser, now at Halcyon Ransomware Research Center, investigated a late February Pay2Key attack against a U.S. healthcare organization coinciding with U.S.-Israel military strikes on Iran. The Iran government-linked group had compromised admin account access for several days before deploying ransomware that encrypted the environment in 3 hours. The variant showed significant anti-detection upgrades from July 2025 versions. Unusually, no data was stolen, suggesting destruction rather than financial motive. Kaiser draws parallels to Albania 2022 attacks, where Iran maintained 14-month access for espionage before weaponizing it. Action: healthcare organizations should assume nation-state actors may have pre-positioned access and audit for dormant admin accounts or unusual lateral movement. Review incident response procedures for rapid encryption scenarios. Source: the Register. Next section: business and infrastructure threats. 13-year-old Apache Active MQRCE, discovered by AI CVE 2026-34197. Horizon 3 researcher Naveen Sunkavli discovered CVE 2026-34197, a remote code execution vulnerability in Apache Active MQ Classic that existed undetected for 13 years, using Claude AI analysis. The flaw, CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 8.8, affects Active MQ/broker versions before 5.19.4 and all 6x versions up to 6.2.3. The vulnerability stems from Active MQ's Jalokia management, a PI, exposing the Add Network Connector function, allowing attackers to load external Spring XML configurations and execute arbitrary system commands. The issue requires Jalokia authentication, but becomes unauthenticated on versions 6.0.0-6.1.1 due to EPSS 2.0%, 84th percentile, which exposes the API without access control, has EPSS 0.1%, 28th percentile, but Horizon 3 warns that prior Active MQ CVEs and are on CIS a KEV and linked to ransomware, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: upgrade Apache Active MQ Classic to version 6.2.3 or 5.19.4 immediately. Search broker logs for suspicious VM transport protocol connections and broker config equals xbean, query parameters. Treat as high priority due to Active MQ's history as ransomware target. Source: Bleeping Computer. Russian GRU APT-28 exploits routers for DNS hijacking. CVE 2023-50224. Russian GRU 85th GTSSS. APT-28/Fancy Bear/Forest Blizzard has been exploiting vulnerable SOHO routers worldwide since at least 2024 to conduct DNS hijacking operations targeting military, government, and critical infrastructure. FBI disrupted a GRU network of compromised routers, including TP-Link devices, exploited via CVE 2023-50224. CIS a KEV due September 24, 2025. EPSS 1.5%/81st percentile. Attackers modify DHCP/DNS settings to introduce actor-controlled DNS resolvers, which connected devices inherit. GRU provides fraudulent DNS answers for specific domains, including Microsoft Outlook Web Access, enabling adversary-in-the-middle attacks against TLS-encrypted traffic if users bypass certificate warnings. GRU harvests passwords, authentication tokens, emails, and web browsing data. Action: SOHO router users should upgrade end-of-support devices, update firmware, change default credentials, and disable remote management interfaces from Internet. Organizations with remote workers should review policies for accessing sensitive data via VPN and hardened configurations. Users should carefully review certificate warnings. Sources: data breaches. Net NCSC UK Advisory, FBI IC 3 PSA I040726. Next section: Windows/Active Directory security. APT-28 deploys Prismex malware targeting Ukraine and NATO allies. Russian APT-28. Forest Blizzard/Pawnstorm launched spearphishing campaign active since September 2025, targeting Ukraine and NATO allies with Prismex malware suite. Targets include Ukrainian central executive bodies, defense, emergency services, and NATO logistics partners in Poland, Romania, Slovenia, Turkey, Slovakia, and Czech Republic. APT-28 rapidly weaponized CVE 2026-21509. CIS a KEV due February 16, 2026. EPSS 7.5%/92nd percentile, and CISAKEV due March 3, 2026, EPSS 28.0%/96th percentile, with infrastructure preparation observed January 12, 2026, 2 weeks before disclosure. Akamai reported APT28 exploited as 0-day based on virus total upload January 30, before Microsoft's February 10 Patch Tuesday fix. Attacks chain the vulnerabilities, forces retrieval of malicious LNK file, which exploits to bypass security and execute payloads. Prismex uses steganography to hide payloads and images, COM hijacking for persistence, and abuses filen. EO for command and control. The Covenant Grunt payload includes wiper functionality that erases all files under %userprofile% and 5 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: Patch CVE 2026-21509 and CVE 2026-21513 immediately, both on CISAKEV. Monitor for COM hijacking persistence, scheduled tasks, and connections to filen. EO Cloud Storage. Inspect PNG images in user directories for steganographic payloads. Source: The Hacker News. Next section, General Security News. Cisco Talos. Using Year in Review for Incident Response Tabletops, Cisco Talos published guidance for incident responders on operationalizing the 2025 Year in Review findings for tabletop exercises. Key findings: identity-based attacks accounted for 60% of Talos IR cases, with Active Directory focal point in 44%. MFA, multi-factor authentication, spray attacks doubled down on privileged accounts, and device compromise attacks rose significantly. Manufacturing was most impacted sector for ransomware in 2025. Talos recommends tabletop scenarios based on real IR casework. Adversary authenticates via VPN, user approves MFA push, attacker gains legitimate perimeter access. Action: security teams should develop tabletop exercises based on identity compromise scenarios. Test detection for anomalous VPN authentication with valid MFA, forced password reset procedures, and session revocation workflows. Source: Talos blog. AWS Bedrock Agent Core, God Mode. IAM Privilege Escalation Palo Alto Unit 42 disclosed privilege escalation vulnerability in AWS Bedrock Agent Core Starter Toolkit's default IAM configuration. The toolkit's auto-create logic generates IAM roles with overly broad permissions across the entire AWS account, rather than scoped to individual resources. An attacker compromising a single agent can exfiltrate proprietary ECR images, access other agents' memories, invoke every code interpreter, and extract sensitive data. AWS updated documentation following disclosure to warn default roles are designed for development and testing purposes and not recommended for production. Action: organizations using AWS Bedrock Agent Core should review and scope down IAM execution roles to follow principle of least privilege. Do not use Starter Toolkit default configurations in production. Apply resource-level IAM policies restricting agent access to only required resources. Source: Unit 42. Next section, Patch Priority. Apache Active MQ Classic upgrade to 6.2.3 or 5.19.4 for CVE 2026-34197, CVSS 8.8, 13-year-old RCE, History of Ransomware Targeting. Ivanti Epp Patch CVE 2026-1340 immediately, CISAKEV, actively exploited, 67.7% EPSS, federal deadline today. Adobe Reader hold PDF processing from untrusted sources pending patch release, 0-day actively exploited since December. Windows Patch CVE 2026-21509 and CVE 2026-21513, CISAKEV, APT28 0-day exploitation, chained attack. TP-Link routers Patch CVE 2023-50224, CISAKEV, GRU DNS hijacking campaign targeting government/critical infrastructure. Next section, Vulnerability Disclosures. CUPS and Avahi Denial of Service Vulnerabilities Microsoft, published CVE 2026-39314 affecting CUPS. Integer underflow in PPD create from IPP causes root CUPS to crash via negative job password supported. EPSS 0.0%/second percentile, and CVE 2026-34933 affecting Avahi. Reachable assertion and transport flags from domain, crashes Avahi daemon via conflicting publish flags, EPSS 0.0%/second percentile. Source: MSRC. OpenSSL and ONCS vulnerabilities Microsoft disclosed multiple low-severity CVEs. CVE 2026-31789. Heap buffer overflow in hexadecimal conversion. EPSS 0.0%/first percentile. Use after free and Dane client code. EPSS 0.0%/fifth percentile. Incorrect failure handling in RSA-KEM. EPSS 0.0%/first percentile. Null pointer dereference processing delta CRL. EPSS 0.0%/first percentile. ONC's arbitrary file read via external data hard link bypass. EPSS 0.0%/first percentile. And ONC's malicious models crash servers. EPSS 0.1%/18th percentile. And 5 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Source, MSRC. libinput plugin vulnerability CVE 2026-35093 affects libinput with unauthorized code execution and information disclosure through Lua bytecode plugins. EPSS 0.0%/4th percentile. Source, MSRC. Next section, Trends and Context. Today's threat landscape emphasizes the convergence of nation-state tradecraft with criminal infrastructure. APT 28, rapid weaponization of Windows 0 days, and Iran's weaponization of dormant healthcare access demonstrate adversaries shifting from espionage to destructive operations with minimal warning. The Team PCP supply chain campaign shows how shared credentials between threat actors create compound breach scenarios where single compromises cascade across multiple victim environments. A 13-year-old active MQ vulnerability discovered by AI analysis suggests technical debt in widely deployed enterprise software poses persistent risk, especially when prior CVEs in the same product already appear on CIS, a KEV linked to ransomware campaigns. That concludes today's cyber threat brief. From Carolina Clear Tech, stay patched, stay vigilant.